Hey guys, before we get to the episode, I want to let you know, if you haven't heard already, February 18th and 19th of 2021, I'm hosting a free virtual summit for you to come and learn how to grow in the 4 pillars of your life. That is your business and finances, your relationships, your wellness, and spirituality. I'm bringing together the experts from all over the world that you've seen on my show to share their tips, tricks, and their secrets on how you can level up your life right now. So head over to growthnowsummit.com, grab your free seat now. It's growthnowsummit.com. Grab your free seat. You'll be able to see the speaker lineup there. I cannot wait to see you guys there, connect with you, and grow a strong relationship so we can all grow together. Again, that's growthnowsummit.com. Grab your tickets now. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. This week, I sit down with Samantha Joy. Samantha Joy is an identity coach to aspiring entrepreneurs and influencers, as well as the #1 bestselling author of The Less Effect: Design Your Life for Happiness and Purpose. She is the founder of the Less Effect Method, which is her coaching approach that allows others to shift their identity to their most authentic self by clearing out aspects of their life rooted in an old story. The result is enhanced mental clarity, an improved sense of self, and the ability to design an environment that attracts abundance, purpose, and fulfillment. I think you guys are going to love this episode. We dive into so many great topics, including, decluttering your life, getting rid of the things that no longer serve you, whether it's physical things, family members, loved ones, and all the things in between. How are we to address that? And how do we begin to clear out the clutter so we can live fully as ourselves? It's truly a great episode. Now, before we get there, just a huge favor to ask you guys. I would love if you head over to iTunes and rate and review the show. Give it a 5-star rating if you like it. Tell me what you think of my job as a host. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to screenshot it, share it on social, and tag me. That way I can thank you personally. I appreciate you guys every single week for tuning in. This has truly been a ton of fun. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Samantha Joy. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time coming, I feel like. Been watching you.
No, it really has, though. I mean,
waiting for my invitation.
I've just been waiting. I've been sitting around. When is Justin going to invite me on?
I got the call. Yes.
Amazing. And I'm excited because you're up to some really amazing things, and obviously being connected to you on social media for years now at this point, and seeing your progression of life, your progression as a business, as a coach, of all these things. I'm excited to dive into all that stuff. But I want to get into, let's start with, who are you today? And then I want to break down how you got there, and we'll talk about all the good things in between.
It's so interesting, Justin, that you're asking me who I am, because isn't it funny that we want to be like, let me give you my role in my business or my title, right? And so I was going to go for that. And it's like, okay, who am I today? I am Samantha Joy. I'm a mom, first and foremost, to a 2.5-year-old, beautiful 2.5-year-old. And I happen to also be an identity coach in my business, The Less Effect, as well as an author.
I love it. So all the things, which I love, obviously being connected to you on social media for years, you see the progression into motherhood. And let's talk about that really quick. Like, first of all, with how is it possible to juggle this entrepreneurial journey, being a coach, helping so many other people through their stuff, while you're like, hey, I'm learning how to be a mom to a newborn, to a 1-year-old, to a 2-year-old as your son gets older?
So I have a very crazy story, but I won't go into that here for the sake of time. The thing that I want to say about that, if I were to really hone in on the main way that I'm able to balance it. And by the way, I don't believe there's a thing as balance. We're just trying to achieve harmony because balance is impossible. But I would say that my son, as much as it has takes a lot of time and energy and attention, potentially away from business things, he has given me the perspective of, he is my reason. He is not my excuse. And it's so, those things are so close together sometimes is, oh, sorry, Justin, I can't make the podcast. I got to be with my son, or I got to do this, I got to do that. And then, no, I find a way and I make him my reason. So honestly, like if I have 2 hours to work during his nap time, well, then I think about what is the life I'm trying to create for this child and our family versus, like just pre-baby, pre-momhood, where I had more time to, I don't know, mess around, right? Where things were not the priorities were a little bit different, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say, making him my reason and not my excuse. And it has pushed me so much further than I've ever been because, not to go down too detailed in my past, but I was in public accounting and then consulting and climbing the ladder in the corporate world. I eventually became a vice president of the last company that I worked for. And that was all great, but it didn't, speak to my soul. I was selling someone else's product and service. So I did my, side hustle, as they call it, consulting and coaching. And, eventually I finally branched out on my own. And yeah, it was a much different ball game, and you really have to reprioritize and all of that. And so my mindset had to shift and my identity had to shift. And there was a lot that came with that. And then going into motherhood, it was like really solidified that I did want to live my passion because I want to be the example for my son. So I just always think like, okay, if I have a few hours to work and focus on, what am I creating and what is the life I want to create and what is the example I want to set for this kid? Right.
Yeah. No, I love that. So I love how you're able to reframe certain things in your mind to view it differently. Like you said, what am I trying to create for him versus using it as an excuse not to be able to get the things done you have to get done. How are you able to hold yourself accountable in those moments? Because I think sometimes it is easy for us to be like, you know what? Life was stressful today. I'm just going to kick back, have a glass of wine, relax. Like, how are you able to hold yourself accountable in those moments?
A coach.
Yeah.
Just, I don't want to be embarrassed. I want to be a high achiever. I want to be, someone that is achieving something great and doing something great in this world. And I want to be able, I have good girl syndrome. I'm like, I want to do everything right. I want to do the homework, always the teacher's pet. So yeah, just wanting to stay on track. And honestly, I'm at a point where my time is really valuable. And, this is the stuff that I preach, for lack of a better term, is what are you doing with your time? And because, your minutes become hours and days and weeks and months and years, and then your life. So, they compound. And so what is that going to look like for you if you continue to do the things that are pulling you back versus moving you forward? And at the end of the day, you wouldn't let down a friend. So why would you let down yourself?
I love that because it's so often people will let down themselves or talk badly to themselves, and they would never do that to a friend or a stranger or a loved one or whatever. And it's amazing how people will do that to themselves constantly. And then therefore it affects the rest of their life, which is absolutely crazy. So I love how you talked about, look, I climbed the corporate ladder. I did these things. Financially, it made sense. I became the vice president of this company, but there was something missing. And that's very similar to kind of my story as far as like where I was and what I was able to do. And I'm like, there's still something missing. What was your aha moment to say, I need to go branch out on my own and recreate my identity and do all those things?
So there's one aha moment in particular. I had already been serving my own clients, working with them, coaching them, and doing that side hustle. And so I'm trying to backtrack before that because it's been such an interesting kind of woven situation where I was doing a lot of the things that I love to do. I was just doing it for someone else.
Right.
So I had a lot of autonomy and independence in my last position, for example, because I was helping grow the company internally as well. And I was doing a lot of coaching and consulting outside of that. So they started to kind of merge. But I would say prior to that, the catalyst, it's my previous life. I was a competitive bodybuilder. And this was years ago when I lived in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And it was when I really started to like fully dive into the concept of mindset and personal development. And because I needed to sustain a very extreme discipline, extreme level of discipline. And so it was imperative that my mind supported that, right? Let alone my body, day in and day out, 3-hour workouts every day and eating a certain way and all of that. Right. So, if you know anything that goes into the competition prep,
it's insane.
It's insane.
I've watched friends of mine do it. I'm like, how? Like you said, I mean, you threw up quotes, and we're going to get into this. You threw up quotes.
I'm throwing up a lot of quotes.
But it's crazy, like how much attention and time and everything. And I mean, the stress on your body, like right now I'm working out an hour and a half a day, and like, I'm like sore 24/7. I couldn't imagine 3 hours a day. So talk a little bit about that and like how you kind of started to dissect that for yourself.
Yeah, that was, I had moved to, I'm going to backtrack a little because now I'm really, you're helping me see where all this came about. I was living in New York. I'll do the Cliff's Notes, living in New York, doing the accounting thing, just living at my desk. Tax season's crazy. People know this, it was my life. Mm-hmm. And I had no life outside of this. And I always knew like, this is not me. I grew up dancing and singing and acting and creative and very like in my feminine. And then somehow I was thrusted into my masculine in the corporate world, in accounting and tax and working and proving myself. It's accounting and finance is a very male dominated industry, right? So not just with my coworkers, but my clients and so on and so forth. So I always knew that there was more for me. I had shied away from the risky thing of becoming a professional dancer when I had opportunities to, and did the safe thing of like, oh, accounting, finance. Yes, this is safe. Everybody needs this. So did that for a few years. And then had an opportunity through some family to do house sitting out in California. And I was like, I was working with she's now a very famous hypnotherapist, like #1 hypnotherapist in the country, Grace Smith. Shout out. She's phenomenal. But at the time I was working with her, and she was a huge turning point for me of getting me to a place of the trust and the belief, like, this is not for me, and I'm going to quit, and I'm going to get a one-way ticket, and I'm going to go to California and just risk it all, because I know I have what it takes to thrive. I don't know what it looks like, but I know whatever comes at me, I will get through it. Right. So I do that. I've never been to San Francisco in my life, and I move there. And I get a job and I go through the motions, but I start to peel back the layers of like, who am I? Right. So I find bodybuilding. The original plan was I'm going to pass my CPA and sit for the exam in New York, or the New York exam in California. And then I'll just go back to my old life as my safety net. I talked about safety nets earlier today, which is a funny concept. Because we all know the safety net is keeping us in lack. It's not moving us forward whatsoever. Right. Burn the boats. Right. So I burned the boats. And I went forward and I found competitive bodybuilding, and I wouldn't say addicted to it, but it really intrigued me because it threw me into this situation that like where I there was no room for error, so to speak, right? Like if you want to win, there is no room for error. And so it was a way to test my, how far I've come with personal development and my own progress in, development of myself. And because I dabbled in books and things and all that. So that was amazing in that way, because I was thriving in it. I was actually very disciplined. It really agreed with me. And then, I just felt great. I felt in shape. I saw my body changing. And the biggest thing I grasped out of that journey, at least, very quickly, I did several shows, was that I'm in the driver's seat. Like there are things around me that I can't control, but there is an abundance of things I can control. And it's all within me. It has nothing to do with anyone else. And that was pretty valuable. And then I went off to place top 2, top 3, becoming nationally qualified. Unfortunately, I suffered from a paralysis in my right side brachial plexus. It's a nerve disease. But even in the midst of that, right, that was my mindset saying, there are doctors saying you can never lift again. You can never do X, Y, Z again. And I said, you know what? Can I swear on this podcast?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I said, fuck you. I can, and I will. And maybe I didn't get as far as I wanted, but truth be told, once I got there and I could have it and it was there for me, being nationally qualified and going to nationals, I didn't want it. I got what I needed. And so that was a longer story than I wanted, but essentially, yeah, it helped me to understand the power of the mind and the thoughts and daily discipline of how far it can get us. And I saw it aesthetically and physically, but I felt it on a much deeper level. Now I did get to a point where aesthetically and all of that stuff, that didn't resonate with me anymore. I had started coaching other people in competition prep, because they had noticed my accomplishments in the field and all of that. And so I was working with these clients, and then I started to feel very empty about it. Like, this is so surface, and there's so much under this. And so I started to kind of pry at certain clients and going deeper. Some did not like it, very triggering. Others dropped me as a coach because they just wanted to look good and have abs. They really didn't care about anything else,
sure.
Which was fine with me because I did care about the deeper levels of that work. So, it kind of became a snowball effect, and I began coaching and diving into personal development, investing in coaches and all that stuff. And then in this last position, they ended up filing for bankruptcy and letting everybody go. And it was like the best day ever. I was like,
right?
Yes, I'm definitely in a place in my life, the less effect you could guess. This is how I think. But when things remove themselves from my life, I do a little happy dance. I'm like, this was not meant for me. Bye-bye, So yeah. And so then it just has been a progression. I mean, having my son, slowed me down a little bit, but then I sped up even quicker because of the reasons I told you in the beginning. He's been such a driving force for me. And I've reached a level of compassion after becoming a mother. You're around kids, you understand, they hold you to a certain standard, right? They help you tap back into your imagination and your play and your fun, and your love for them puts you on a new level of compassion for human beings. Right.
And they're, what's crazy for me when we talk about kids, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but like their ability to show love no matter what is unbelievable. And I'm like, that's a lesson in itself, right? Like, to be like, holy crap, like, you literally just got in trouble, but you want a hug from me, from the person who got you in trouble. Like, can we explain this for a second? Like, it's very interesting to kind of watch all of that kind of unfold, and it's so true. Well,
and my comment to that is, you would ask how I keep myself accountable. And truth be told, where does it all stem from? It stems from self-love. Do I want to engage in something that is unhealthy and going to sabotage all the things I want for myself and my son? Or am I going to do the thing that's going to get me that life that I deserve, that I'm worthy of, right? So when I have a moment where I'm like, I really want to binge Netflix, and that's fine once in a while, binging, maybe not. Extremes aren't great. However, be human. It's great. And know when it's not, you're not in that vehicle of where you want to go, when you're on the side of the road. Don't stay too long on the side of the road.
I love that. So you mentioned in your journey, the less effect, right? You're like, I love when things let me go because it's less that I have to, manage or whatever. Let's talk a little bit about the less effect. Obviously, something super intriguing to me, because I have no attachment to things, period. Like, I just don't. And so when I hear people talk about these things of like letting things go, and I'm intrigued, right? So tell me a little bit about how this began for you and why you felt like this was your book, like this was the thing you were writing.
Yeah. So now that you know kind of the foundational piece of my career journey, I found minimalism. This was 2016, maybe. And I was working with a mentor at the time, and he had asked me this question it was a very simple question. And now I ask clients this all the time, is when's the last time you felt like you? And you, Justin, in particular, like, you worked on yourself. You don't have a lot of attachments. You're in your zone of genius, like right in this moment. So it's easy to be like, right now, but for so many of us, it's, oh gosh, okay. I have to sit and think about that. And I have to think about what is, in quotes, I'm doing air quotes, what does you mean? What does me mean? What does feeling like me mean? And what came out of that conversation was, we were diving a little bit deeper of where I felt the most free and the most in flow, and just like when you're in your zone of genius and you're in you, that everything just is like, here, silver platter. Oh, you mentioned that you had a fleeting thought that you wanted that thing. Well, here it is. It's a real thing once you achieve that. Right. So I had glimpses of that, but it wasn't in this consistent high vibration of that, where it was just like the way my life was going. So I had realized how many times I had moved from different cities. I worked very hard in the corporate world, but I was able to achieve an executive level position in a male dominated field because I was cutthroat. I was like, oh, you're not going to promote me here or pay me what I deserve. Bye-bye. Somebody else wants me. And so I was very good at that. My social life was a different story. Right. So, but
it's always in one area, right?
Yeah. You got a business and life. They're two different animals. So, it was working with my mentor and really digging deep into the fact that I had been moving a lot. I was climbing the ladder and moving, and I was chasing a lot. Right. And there was a complete lack of intention. I realized I haven't really taken inventory of things around me. So the mixture of, or the combination of being exposed to minimalism and starting to just like be more intentional about shedding. When I was moving a lot, it was purging, right? It was like, let me just get rid of all this stuff and escape, right? And start fresh, right? We like to escape a lot. So then we don't have to deal with it when it all lives inside of us. Wherever we go, there we are. So I started to, through minimalism, becoming more intentional, which opened up the conversation for me to consciously be like, oh, wait, I was moving a bunch and escaping and all of this stuff. What if, and then I got to the point where, what if I applied this concept of minimalism, to social, right? The social environment, the people around me that I chose, or like, I think subconsciously a lot of the time was like, oh, they're here. They want me. I want to be validated. We'll just keep going with it. Hope it gets better. Yeah, that's enough. I don't want to be alone. Being alone is worse than being around the wrong people, is what I thought, which is not true. And then just flowing it into, well, what if I also did this for my habits, right? Like I took inventory of my habits, and it's all about bringing the intention in and decluttered things and made space and trusted in the process that the space would then, with that intention, bring in things that were more aligned and more in my truth, because isn't that where we all want to be? Right. Yeah. And so he's like, great. Why don't you create a program around this? And I was like, I think I will. So I always say I was the first beta, and it's funny because as I'm putting myself through this beta, it becomes its own method. And it becomes a program. And I have another beta with a bunch of people in it whose lives are changing, and people are leaving long-term relationships and moving across the country and quitting their C-level jobs. And I'm like, oh my God, this works.
Like, this is a real thing. It's actually
working. Yeah. And then, it just became a system. And I'm not a genius. Like, this is not rocket science. Sorry, I'm not a rocket scientist. It's not that like, this magic, we can make it woo-woo where it's like, if you it's all about energy, right? Like if you make space in here, then your energy is better and all this stuff. Great. Yeah. But if energy goes where attention flows. So if we're going to keep, I'm just going to use the social aspect. This is a big thing that comes up with my coaching group and my private clients is, all right, let's keep focusing on and giving energy to people that are toxic, or people that are like in a romantic relationship, emotionally unavailable. Like that's where your attention is. So the person over there that wants to love you and is very secure and can meet your needs, you're not going to see them. And if we're hoarders and we're keeping crap in our home, we're not going to love our space, and it's just going to flow into like everything that we do. And the bigger piece of it is, to really dive into the heart of what the less effect is that every day we're creating something. And a lot of times it's subconscious. More commonly, it's subconscious. So what that means is when we're living from a subconscious place, we're living from an old story and an old belief system. And what that does is it perpetuates itself in our external environments, right? Yeah. So we don't let go of things in our home, because the things in our home are the things that support a story that keep us comfortable, right? There's a concept called self-verification. So we keep things close to us that validate a story about ourselves. And again, this can be a subconscious action.
Yeah.
And we push away. We push away things that challenge that story. Right. And we're in a cycle. We're doing this every day. So again, we do this physically in our environment. Let's keep like these old outfits, or let's keep whatever it is, insert physical item here because it's comfortable and it supports my limiting beliefs. Let's keep this person in my life because it's comfortable. It supports my limiting beliefs. Habits, same deal. Comfortable supports limiting beliefs. And so it just keeps going on and on and on. So what I do is I break the pattern. And I just had a woman today who was talking about her suits and going back to HR, but she wants to be an entrepreneur. That's why she hired me. So you need to get rid of the suits. And the suits are also the people in your life that don't align with you. If you don't start making the room and you keep living with that safety net or that comfort that supports that old story, that's all you'll ever see. So then the cycle just continues.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. As you were talking, I was like, what am I holding on to physically that is telling me a story? And the funny thing is I've always kind of been like, not by choice, but just by life, like more of a minimalist person. I'm not a minimalist. Like I'd not 100% practice it, but like I have very few things, right? Very few attachments in my life. And I realized I kind of dissected my life one day when minimalism became a thing. And it might've been right around 2016. I think that documentary came out. And they have a second one out now, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched it yet, but so as I was sitting there, like kind of dissecting everything, I realized that I had moved so much as a kid. I lived in a very large house till I was 12. And then my parents both went broke at the same time and got a divorce. And when we moved into like smaller and smaller houses, so I moved from a $500,000 home to my dad moved into a trailer. My mom moved into a 2-bedroom apartment, and we just got rid of things. And so like, we have to get rid of it. There's no room for it. We just have to get rid of it. And so I learned that at a young age. And so I have no attachment to things. Now, there have been moments in my life where there was an attachment to a person, right? That wasn't healthy for me, an attachment to that thing. Even when it was over, there was still an attachment there. But I've learned over time and through coaches and so on and so forth, how to obviously get rid of that stuff too. But it's so interesting the way you broke that down to say we hold on to it because it allows the excuse for us not to go jump into the scary thing, essentially. You said it so much nicer than I just did, but I think I was kind of close, to the concept at least. But I love that. And so as you kind of navigated this in your own life and started to help other people, what other kind of breakthroughs are you seeing for individuals as they're navigating this thing?
So it's not this like linear thing, right? It's a little bit forward, a little bit backward. I'm feeling so free. I just let go of this thing, but the freedom is now very scary. So I'm going to go back. Right. But it's always different. If I'm working with someone personally, it's interesting because it's so different from the coaching group where everyone's kind of like cheering each other on, but it's what collectively, I don't know if pattern is the right word, but what I see commonly is, so there's 3 sections, right? There's physical environment, social environment, habitual environment. They are in that order by design. It is the easiest to let go of physical items, as hard as it can be. And it's very sacred. We do it in a very sacred way. And then, as you get rid of something physically in your environment, you are more rooted in your identity. This all goes back to identity. What is identity? The way we perceive ourselves. And the way we perceive ourselves affects every single thing that we do. Right? So when we start from the physical perspective, it grounds us more in that identity. So then when we move into the social aspect of this program and of this work and this shedding, we are more confident in who we are and speaking our truth. So we are better at setting boundaries. We're better at having the hard conversations. We're better at shedding relationships, to put it a little bit aggressively,
yeah.
Right? Discarding, right? Just whatever. So that is the section in the social environment piece of it that I see the most breakthroughs, because it's the scariest. As human beings, we don't want to be alone. And so I help people to reframe. I help these clients to reframe their thinking about it, because we can go to a place where we're shedding these people and it's so sad and we're so lonely. Or we're going to a place where we're shedding these people and we, instead of waiting to be chosen, which is something I find so often as the excuse of not being able to let go of a person, instead of waiting to be chosen, we choose ourselves by taking the action and being intentional and ending the relationship. I have so many things to say about this, but the breakthroughs happen there because yes, you can throw something out in your house. And yes, by doing that, you've chosen yourself to an extent. But when you end a relationship, especially if it's a romantic one or a marriage, or it is a lifelong childhood friend or a family member, it comes up a lot. Mm-hmm. It can feel debilitating up until the point that you do it. And that's the crazy thing is the breakthroughs don't just come from, oh, I chose myself, this feels amazing. It comes from, oh my gosh, all this time I had crippling fear and made up an entire story. And then the fear ended when I did the thing. Right. And then from there, it's like this is why habits come last, because by default, you're so grounded in you and your beliefs. You're so clear on your boundaries. You're so clear on your vision and what you want and what you'll tolerate and what you won't. So the mindset piece, because you've already dealt with the identity piece, a big portion of it, it's so solidified that by default, when you have an opportunity to engage in something or think a certain way or speak a certain way, it comes from such a empowered, rooted, truthful place.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. Now I know that you have a strong opinion on the terms imposter syndrome. And I want to dive into that, as this is a very common phrase everybody uses these days. And actually I'm curious to hear your in-depth thought on the idea of imposter syndrome, because I actually have a coach and a mentor now that shed some light on a deeper level for me as well. So I just want to hear what it is, your thoughts on this, because a lot of people feel like they have imposter syndrome, so therefore they can't step into their true higher self, however you want to word it, right? So what are your thoughts around that whole entire thing?
Deep breath. Okay, so I'm going to ruffle feathers, maybe. If your feathers are ruffled, by the way, I'm talking to you. Okay. So, so I have definitely gone through a lot of imposter syndrome. Okay. So I am at the time I was in my early 30s, a woman in, again, a male dominated field in accounting and finance and tech, mind you. My last job was the vice president of tech. Okay. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm not a techie. I love tech. I'm creative. With integrations and solutions and all of that, but I can't code. I mean, I knew like basic coding, but I can't really use it. It's like when you know a language, but you can't really speak it that well. That was me. Right. And so that imposter syndrome, when I was given that position, I knew to be like, jump off the cliff and build the wings on the way down. That's just how I live. But on the way down, I'm like, shit, these wings, are they coming? Like, what's going on? And so, and in the package that I'm in, for lack of a better term, I came up against a lot of instances that perpetuated or could potentially perpetuate that imposter syndrome of like, you're going to come consult me. You're going to run this company. You're going to scale my company. It's like, yeah, I'm here to do that. And I just kept pushing through. Right. And I tell you all this because my imposter syndrome was like a level 9. Okay. I was super capable. I was speaking at events. I was traveling. I was consulting huge companies in New York City. And I was at a level 9 of imposter syndrome, as capable as I was. And do you know why that is?
I don't.
Because I was not living in my purpose. Okay. So imposter syndrome is the tap on the shoulder, like, hey, you're not doing what you're here to be doing. Now, there's a difference between feeling nervous / excited, like going to speak on stage or all these things, of stepping into something bigger than you've ever done. Imposter syndrome isn't like a thing in a moment. It's where you feel you're living in your life right now. Okay. We can have moments of like, whew, this is something new. This is uncomfortable, but it's exciting, when you get those kind of like dual feelings in there. That is different from, I'm like coaching, for example. I hear so many coaches say in coaching, it's part of the deal. It's part of the package. You become a coach because you're an imperfect person. You're coaching people. So therefore you're going to feel imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So the idea there is then you're not serving them from a genuine place, or, you're not serving the right clientele that you resonate with or resonates with you or aligns with you. Right. And so, yeah, imposter syndrome is really just that sign that you're not fully living in your passion. You're not in your zone of genius, and you're not serving from a place that's from that true identity and from your heart. Because if your driver is money, power, fame, whatever falls into that bucket, you're going to feel like an imposter. I felt like an imposter in my last position because I like tech and I think it's really handy and great. But I was addicted to like being this young female in an executive position running shit, like the validation was amazing.
Yeah.
And so that is not correct. That is not a heart-centered, aligned driver.
I love that. I love that take on it. And it's so true. Especially in the coaching world. I have a whole thought process on that of life coaches from their mother's basement and so on and so forth. There's a lot of that. And I imagine those people are feeling a lot of imposter syndrome, which I love that take on it. So one thing that I have the honor of doing because of this podcast is I get to interview some of the most successful people in the world, which is why I love having this conversation with you. So my question for you is, what's your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Okay, I love that. I've thought about this so much. So to answer your first question, I don't put success in a vacuum. Like, success is commonly a term that we as Americans in this Western world, we link to, or many of us outside of America link to a dollar sign or some level of power or fame, the things that I mentioned before. Success for me is choosing myself. Like, it's not tied to something outside myself. It's tied to something within myself. So when I'm up against, instances where I can choose something outside myself or do something that kind of railroads myself, and I don't, and I choose myself and it's not harming anyone, and I am staying rooted in that truth day in and day out, that to me is success.
I love that. I love that.
You asked 3 things. Yeah. 3 things that keep me there. I have a lot of different self-love practices, but it's really important for me. I do a lot of EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique tapping with affirmations. I'm human too. I have moments where I'm like not feeling 100% on the vibration scale. And so, yeah, making sure that I have some type of self-love, self-nurturing practice, could look like the EFT. It could look like dancing. I started taking private lessons twice a week, which has been amazing. So engaging in some form of reconnecting self-love back to myself. I am very, very, and not perfect, but very rigorous with who I invite into my space. So that social environment piece, right? So I am pretty, I wouldn't say cutthroat, but really cognizant of who I surround myself with. So that's up there. A third thing, this is going to sound kind of basic, but I get outside. Like, it just getting outside. There's something about nature and slowing down and being in a present place for me. Well, nature brings that for me, that presence, like no other place.
Right.
And so being in Colorado, it's been such a blessing. And, it allows me to be in nature and remember that it just reminds me there's stuff that's just so much bigger than us.
Yeah.
Perspective, right?
No, I love all that. And obviously getting outside now, especially for a lot of people during COVID and as we feel locked down, I don't know what Colorado's like right now, but with the lockdowns and everything like that, just to even get outside and clear your mind every day. Like, me and my girlfriend walk 3+ miles every morning. So we get out and we do that every single morning. And it's our kind of reset. It's our breather. It's our whatever, and it's just a phenomenal way to reconnect with what's good in my life right now. And to kind of refocus onto that. So I love that. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they work with you? What's all the good stuff?
Okay. Gosh, we have so many platforms now. I will streamline this.
All the platforms.
You can find me on Instagram, and it is at Samantha_Joy__. And then Facebook, if you search Samantha Joy, The Less Effect, you will find me there. I have my website, thelesseffect.com, and you can also find my book on Amazon if you search The Less Effect. And lastly, I'm on Clubhouse now, so you can find me on there. I am at Samantha Joy. I am loving the conversations over there, so you can find me there as well.
I'm loving Clubhouse as well. I'm curious. So you're the first person to mention Clubhouse on the podcast as far as where can people find me. I'm curious how long this will last. Like, is this the one that sticks around? Is this the one where we forget about in 6 months? We'll see. But I'm loving it as well. I think massive information connection, so much going on over there. So they should definitely check you out. Apparently you go live every Monday, so they can check that out. And
every Monday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time.
I love it. And like I said, Samantha, I wrap up every single interview with this question. Since the show is called The Growth That Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Giving birth to my son. Oh my gosh. Life-changing.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Well, Samantha, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with myself and my audience. I've loved this conversation. I'm sure you're going to be on again in the future. This was phenomenal. Thank you.
So much fun, Justin. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.